There's a moment most men misread. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't sound cruel. It looks like space. And it sounds like silence. Before we go any further, if you're here to understand patterns instead of chasing reassurance, stay with the channel and make sure you're subscribed. Distance is rarely about absence. It's about control. When she pulls back, it's easy to assume confusion, fear, or loss of interest. But distance often serves a different psychological function. It restores leverage. It recalibrates power. It allows the nervous system to feel sovereign again. Power, in this context, isn't domination. It's agency. The ability to regulate one's own emotional state without depending on another person's response. Closeness collapses uncertainty. Distance restores it. And uncertainty is where power lives. The nervous system feels powerful when it's not fully exposed. When it doesn't need immediate validation. When it can observe instead of react. Distance creates that position. This is why distance often follows vulnerability. After emotional openness, after intimacy, after moments where she felt seen too clearly, something shifts. The system retreats. Not because intimacy was wrong, but because it was destabilizing. Being seen removes leverage. When someone knows how you feel, where you stand, what you want, your emotional position is fixed. Distance unfixes it. That unfixing feels powerful. This isn't manipulation in the cartoon sense. It's self-regulation. When closeness increases emotional dependency, distance restores internal balance. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Emotional availability reduces power asymmetry. Distance recreates it. And power asymmetry is regulating to the nervous system. Pause here for a moment. Think about how people behave after revealing something personal. There's often a pullback. Not always conscious. Just enough to feel grounded again. That pullback isn't rejection. It's recalibration. Closeness feels like merging. Distance feels like separation. Separation restores identity. Many women learn early that emotional closeness carries risk. Risk of disappointment. Risk of abandonment. Risk of losing control. So the nervous system develops a simple strategy. Approach, then retreat. Approach to connect. Retreat to stabilize. Over time, this becomes patterned. Distance becomes associated with relief, with clarity, with strength. This is why distance often feels empowering even when it hurts the relationship. Another pause. This pattern doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means caring costs her something internally. Distance refunds that cost. Now consider how power is experienced emotionally. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the absence of urgency. The absence of chasing. The absence of needing an outcome. Distance removes urgency. When she creates space, she regains the upper hand in her own nervous system. She no longer waits for replies. She no longer scans for reassurance. She watches instead of wonders. Watching feels powerful. This is why distance often increases attraction from the other side. Not because distance is inherently attractive, but because power is. Power signals self-possession. But here's the contradiction people miss. Distance feels powerful to the one creating it and destabilizing to the one receiving it. So the same action regulates one nervous system while dysregulating the other. This asymmetry is the engine. When she feels herself becoming emotionally invested, distance prevents overexposure. It protects autonomy. It ensures she isn't the one reaching, explaining, or waiting. Distance flips the roles. And role reversal restores power. There's also a deeper layer tied to attachment. For someone who learned that closeness precedes loss, distance becomes safety. It's how they avoid being caught off guard. How they keep the upper hand. Power here isn't about control over you. It's about control over vulnerability. Distance keeps vulnerability at bay. This is why reassurance doesn't always help. Reassurance increases closeness, and closeness increases the urge to pull back. The more emotionally available you become in response to her distance, the more necessary the distance feels to her nervous system. It's not cruelty, it's equilibrium. Another realization that's difficult to accept. Distance often increases when the relationship becomes more secure, not less. Security reduces uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty can feel like loss of leverage. Distance restores uncertainty. Uncertainty restores power. This is why some women pull away after commitment, after consistency, after stability. The system isn't reacting to danger. It's reacting to saturation. Too much predictability collapses the sense of agency. Agency needs options. Distance creates options. Options don't have to be real. They just have to feel possible. Distance makes possibility visible. Now let's look at how this plays out over time. Early on, distance is subtle. A slower reply, a postponed plan, a vague response. The nervous system tests how it feels. If distance restores calm, it gets repeated. Patterns that calm the body become habits. Over time, distance becomes a go-to tool for self-regulation. Stress rises, she pulls back. Vulnerability increases, she pulls back. Desire peaks, she pulls back. The pullback is the stabilizer. Men often misinterpret this as loss of interest and respond by leaning in harder. More availability, more explanation, more effort. This widens the power gap. The more you lean, the more distance she needs to feel balanced again. Another pause. Notice how quickly this turns into a cycle. Distance creates pursuit. Pursuit creates pressure. Pressure creates more distance. Each step makes sense to the nervous system involved. Together, they create disconnection. Here's the expectation-breaking truth. Distance doesn't always mean she wants less of you. It often means she wants more of herself. More autonomy. More emotional sovereignty. More internal quiet. When the relationship starts defining her emotional state too strongly, distance reclaims ownership. Ownership feels like power. This is also why distance can feel addictive. It works. It calms. It restores control. And what works gets repeated. But here's the cost people ignore. Power gained through distance is temporary. It doesn't build connection. Postpones it. Over time, constant distance erodes trust. It teaches the other person that closeness is unsafe. That vulnerability is punished with withdrawal. Eventually, pursuit stops. And when pursuit stops, distance loses its effect. That's when confusion appears. Not earlier. The dynamic only feels stable while one person is still reacting. Once both detach, the power disappears. Another reflection. True power in relationships isn't distance. It's self-regulation without withdrawal. That requires internal stability. Distance is a shortcut, a nervous system hack. It creates the feeling of power without the foundation. This is why distance often collapses later in life. When isolation becomes heavier than vulnerability. When power without connection feels empty. But early on, distance feels clean. Feels controlled. Feels strong. Because strength to a dysregulated nervous system means not needing. And distance simulates not needing. Here's the final realization. She needs distance to feel powerful because closeness makes her feel exposed. Distance restores emotional sovereignty. It gives her space to breathe, to recalibrate, to remember herself outside the bond. That doesn't make her cold. It makes her adaptive. But adaptation has limits. Distance can regulate temporarily, cannot replace connection. And power built on withdrawal eventually demands isolation as its price. Once you understand this, you stop chasing distance and start observing it. You recognize when space is a signal, not a solution, and you decide whether you want a dynamic built on retreat or one built on mutual stability. Power that requires distance is fragile. Power that survives closeness is real. See the pattern. Protect your energy. This is depth realm.